Election time in the village. The time when every man and woman is able to vote for a leader. A vote that is free for all.
It looks like a unanimous majority.
Exactly, that's what's worrying me. Very bad for morale. Some of these good people don't seem to appreciate the value of free elections.
Everyone votes for a dictator.
Not at all. Frankly, my dear fellow, you are just the sort of candidate we need.
How are you going to handle your campaign?
No comment.
Intends to fight for freedom at all costs.
Who elected you? Whose side are you on?
Doesn't get too personal, my dear fellow.
Look at them. Brainwashed imbeciles.
The rules demand that you should undergo the test.
What is the price of his freedom and his chance to control the village? It's free for all to see in the next exciting episode of The Prisoner on this channel.
On this channel, once again, as I welcome you to my own channel. My God, this is our third episode review. I am so excited to be here with you. This is, I think, one of my favorite episodes of The Prisoner in our order. We've made it number 3, Free for All, which I think I'm liking our order better than any order I've ever experienced before, even though we're only 3 episodes in. Yeah. So welcome, sir. 6 of one, one half dozen of the other. And they actually say that. Yeah. They say that in this episode.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Welcome to our show, and once again, thank you for allowing me to host this episode on my channel.
Hey, it's all good. This is absolutely one of the best episodes of The Prisoner. I love this episode.
My God, and how topical is it for the Americans?
Oh, this is couldn't be any more relevant than right now. This is perfect, perfect timing, perfect episode. And especially after yesterday's news, it's just like, who is the puppet master and who is the puppet? I think this episode's got some great layers to it. They get peeled away, and I adore it. Absolutely adore this one.
And they actually have real liquor in the village, as we discover.
Yes, or do they?
You have to know where to get it, right?
This is the thing with the village, or do they? But we
I'll
do see. Was it the mouse and the nightclub? We do see the nightclub, and this is the only time that you ever see the nightclub.
Yeah.
So it's like a one-off set. You get something quite special in this episode,
and it looks and tastes just like it, but there's no alcohol in it.
Whiskey, vodka. Gin. Looks the same to gin. Yeah, looks the same, tastes the same.
Well, where to begin with this episode? Again, we're introduced immediately to a new number 2, and he's
I think this number 2's been around for about a week or so by the looks of it.
Sure, but he's one of the oldest number 2s, isn't he?
Eric Portman. I think it was around. He was in his. I think only early to mid 60s in this episode.
Maybe he just looks over.
And it synergistically fits perfectly with the week before, because, of course, the week before we had number 2 appear on the TV again. Yep. And we have the influx of maids coming in and out. So I think it ties together perfectly.
I do too. I mean, and right from the get, when the episode starts, you're sort of dropped right into the action. I mean, one of those moments. One of the things I love about this episode, and again, it harks back to Arrival, when number 2 calls him, and then he's just outside the door. He calls him on the phone as if there's.
They already know what's going to happen.
They know what's going on. Breakfast is ready. Let's wheel in the breakfast cart. And
breakfast is ready. He's not going to come to you. You're going to have to come to him.
The mountain must come to Muhammad.
Yeah, Everest.
Everest. I mean, also the dialogue, the script in this episode is so good.
Yes,
and there's so many great zingers, and there's so many great dialogue moments right from the beginning, and I love that. The mountain comes to Muhammad, and indeed it does, like immediately, because I'm standing right outside your door. Always.
Well, that exchange between them in the beginning is so quick fire, and it's intelligent, and it's probing, And he's just such a, you don't tend to get dialogue like that anymore.
No.
There's a lot of references to outside world, really. Which is something that the show, or they certainly in The Village, they very rarely do. So again, this gives the illusion that this is very early doors in the prisoner's incarceration cycle.
Yes, I mean, and there's some very interesting things, even when our perky, our perky waitress
Maid.
or maid or what, she brings the food to. It's when she comes in. I love after she leaves. The prisoner says to number two, the food, is it French? And he says it's international. I love that. It's international. Again,
the French ties on from last week because, like I said, I think there was a lot of French references.
Yeah.
In Dance of the Dead. This week's episode, a lot of Russian references. So it gives that period. First episode, you kind of thought English. Second episode, French. This episode, Russian. And I'm very pleased to say that this episode was actually written by Patrick McGoohan as well.
Yes, and I think that's I think that's very. I was reading the clash between the emotion and the intellect. What is it, Markinson, the other scriptwriter?
Yes. Yeah.
So
is it George?
George
Markstein. Is it Markstein?
Markstein. That's right, George Markstein. Markinson is a spy in another movie. but Markstein and McGoohan, they writing. I think that there's a lot of intellectual concepts in here, but there is also a lot of emotion. And it was really, when you're getting this from McGoohan, this is to me uncut Prisoner. It's not. There's no talcum powder added to this.
This is one of the 7. This is one of the sacred 7 episodes. This was what was meant to be,
right?
And so I think it really feels it in the writing. It feels, like I said, it really feels connected. The connective tissue to what is happening in the show.
Sure.
And again, the slight degradation in their treatment of the character.
Only slight. I mean, he gets kind of put through the ringer in this episode. I mean, psychologically, physically.
Don't damage the tissue.
Don't damage the tissue. And yet, I mean, there's also a great stunt in this episode where he's literally hanging off a boat. It's just a brief shot. It's probably a stunt man, but maybe it was him. Maybe he fell overboard. But it's there's a lot of great torture and psychological manipulation in this episode from the very beginning. I mean, not that there isn't in every episode, but in this episode in particular, I mean, poor number 6. He thinks at the end of the episode, he thinks he's got one over on everybody. No, he doesn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an interesting one because I don't think he's in control of all his faculties at the end still.
Oh, no, he's certainly not.
I think it's almost instinct that he's relying on. There's that part of him that refuses to break. I want to pose you a question, which I'd be very intrigued to hear what your answer is. Was number 2 ever number 2? Or was number 2 the true 56? And 56 obviously was number 2 at the end.
The number 2 that we have through the majority of this episode is not number 2.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Eric Portman. I think he's number 2's lackey.
Yes,
and I'll tell you something. The true reveal at the end is great. Yeah.
And when I was watching this again, that was one of the questions that I was thinking to myself. I'm like, as I went, I'm like, I want to look at this episode closely because that question has always been one I've asked myself. And I think at the end of the episode, it's clear that he isn't. And also because when you go through a lot of the well, let's call it campaigning, it's too. It doesn't seem. I mean, obviously, it doesn't seem real. It's all trumped up, but it so to speak. But it's. I didn't even mean to say that. I meant that unironically. But I always get the idea that he's the real number two would not do what he does in the episode. If anything, the real number two would have had a proxy running for him. But I guess because the whole thing is you're running for number two. But yeah, then they did. Absolutely. And so that's why I believe it. And he was never number two. And I think it becomes very apparent as the episode goes on. But I think for the first time, if you guys have never seen this episode before, again, I don't think you know that she's number two. I think that's a really great reveal. And I think maybe now 50 years later, it might not be as great of a reveal because we've seen so many, again, The Prisoner being so influential, we've seen that kind of reveal before.
Yeah, bait and switch. Yeah.
Bait and switch. But this one, I think it's particularly well done. And every time I watch this episode, I forget that she's the reveal at the end of the episode. I always forget it. I buy into what's going on as I watch.
Well, the interesting aspect of that to me is when number two is on the phone. The phone rings relatively early on when he's in the surveillance room.
Right.
And it gives you the impression he's speaking to number one. Because during the early exchange, of course, between number six and number two, he says, number six is probing, what would happen if I ran in these elections? Well, you'd run the village. And it's number one runs the village.
Right.
And then we get if you win, then I would introduce you to number one. So it's that I think is purposely distracting you from the bait and switch.
Sure.
As opposed to trying to tease number one. I think it's very much a distraction aspect to keep your attention away from the maid, your suspicions away from the maid. And when he's on the phone in the supervisor's office, I think he's speaking to number 56. He's not speaking to number one. I think it's her that's saying, hey, come on, be careful. You're going a bit hard. Just ease back a little bit, please. Don't damage the tissue. And it's very clever. Looking back retroactively, it fits. It fits perfectly.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, and there's so many things in this episode, especially now, that I love. And one of my favorite moments is when the photographer jumps on the hood of the car and the reporter jumps into the back of the car. What do you call it? The car, the go-kart, whatever.
Yeah, it's a car. It's a car. Yeah.
I love the reporter asking number six questions, and he keeps saying no comment. And he's like, okay, and it just comes up with whatever policy they want to report on, and then at the end when he actually does say something of note, then the reporter's like, oh, so you have no comment here. I mean, it just encapsulates.
Well, we know what it's saying, though, don't we? You can't have your own thought.
Oh, of course.
You have it constructed for you. When he finishes that ride, the tally-ho is already
there, and it's so yeah. And I love that because it seems more relevant now than ever before. What does our own president talk? Fake news, fake news, fake news. When literally, it's such a beautifully done example of all of that in a very short economical scene with that great punch at the end when they.
We could say Joe Biden with Kamala. And so you've got your puppet and your puppet master behind them, and so there's you can certainly pop it to modern day. Modern day politics. I think just modern day politics in general.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's it's just so much fun. They do so much is accomplished in this episode in these very relatively short economical scenes. I mean, there's not these scenes last just a couple of minutes. There's not long. I mean, other than when he's being, victimized, brainwashed, or the action scene when he takes off in the boat, those are longer. But all of these exchanges, there's so much packed into this episode. I mean, it's pretty. They take us on a pretty big journey in this 50 minutes of show.
It's a big journey. It has a great twist. Obviously, back in the day would have been a fantastic twist to the episode.
Right.
It almost shows the futility of democracy, which is kind of heartbreaking at times. But it more, I think it more points to the fact that it's not actually about the voter. It's about the opposing forces doing everything that they possibly can to just one up. You have number 2, which stands for administration, which stands for order, which stands for conformity. And then when number 6 is campaigning, inverted commas, he just tries to diametrically oppose that, even though it's not actually what he truly believes. Right. Number 6 is not a frivolous person. He's not somebody that wastes time. His time is very precious, and he uses it to the maximum. So him saying, "Oh, well, you want to do all this. You're so busy working, you don't have time for free, for spare time." Well, we're going to have free time on my watch. On my watch, there's going to be less work and more play. It's just playing contrarian, almost, which is the political game half the time. Instead of working, just in the general rule of thumb, instead of working with your political opponent, instead of working together to forge something, it's always an opposite. It's always a two magnets repelling each other that you should attract, but you're bouncing off. You're essentially doing the same thing, but from a different angle, and so you're just repelling each other.
Absolutely. And I also think that in his, like you said, when he's campaigning, that you do get a little bit of what he believes the village is when he's addressing people. Like, he addresses them all as, you all have secrets. He just is, in a way, he's assuming that everyone in the village is like him. And I find that interesting. Like, in his mind, and I want to say it's in his unaltered mind, he really believes that everybody there is like him. And I've never thought that's necessarily true. But in this episode, at least, he portrays that to be his belief, that everybody in the village, whereas, like, I've always, if you watch the show as the show progresses, to me, all of the village, everybody there, even though, yes, there's other things that are going on, sure, but for the most part, everybody there is kind of dedicated to this one particular project, and that is to break number 6. And I think never more so than in this particular episode, because look, it appears like everybody in the village is there to march, either for number 2 or for number 6, and that everybody we see is caught up in this power struggle that's happening very much out in the open, in front of everyone, until it's not, until he's sequestered away and brainwashed or drugged, because he is repeatedly through this. I mean, I get the idea that they start drugging him at breakfast, when
yes, when he's eating breakfast, yeah.
I mean, when breakfast is already that prepared for you, when you don't have to wait for it to be prepared, it's full of all kind of psychotropic. I mean, they probably have chickens that lay psychotropic eggs just to give to number 6 somewhere, because I mean, he's from the beginning, he's being toyed with, as he always is, but he doesn't really have. It's kind of unfortunate because, again, I do feel that there's an element of claustrophobia in the sense that number 6 from the very beginning, it's not like he's given a choice.
Rover pushes him to the town hall, for goodness sake.
Literally, and then we see multiple rovers later. I mean, I love the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds, our flying team. You see Thunderbirds formation of rovers in this episode.
Rovers,
which
I love the helicopter scene, but I actually think it's quite a tragic speech that number 6 gives when he's still of his own mind. When he says, you're free, you're individuals, you're free, and they all laugh.
Right.
And
right.
then and then he says, he says what you said, that at some time you all possessed something important. And I'm actually of the persuasion that that's correct. For the most part, I do think there are plants, but I think for the most part that's correct. But what he follows up with, I think, is what happens is some of you have broken and gone over. And so there is an assimilation within the village organically, an organic assimilation of people who have come over, been quite prepared to break and help in the process. And he says, I intend to find out who are the prisoners and who are the warders. And then I think to myself, God damn it, Checkmate would actually be a great episode to follow this one. Because it would really kind of fit perfectly with this story. And we know that's to be true. He's actually correct. There are a distinct number of people that do have their individuality still, as we find out from Checkmate. But we do also discover that there is a huge proportion of that village which is out to get you.
Oh, no. Absolutely. And, again, I can't help but think, when I watch these shows, I always think about the greater society at large. And in a way, now that I'm watching The Prisoner, I hadn't watched the series in a number of years. And going back and rewatching these episodes, I have to say, I am a little depressed. I mean, when I saw it before, I was younger and I was like, wow, our world's never going to be like this. Thank God. I mean, this whole series is a cautionary tale. And now when I watch it, it's just a reminder of where we're at.
I mean, if we were to broad stroke here, it kind of tells the political story of a human being. A human being, when they're younger and they start to vote, they have a more liberal attitude for the most part. And they tend to believe in much more causes and much more altruism and all that. As you get older and you become married, wife, kids, job, mortgage, and you start to get more complexities of life, more life experience, more rejection, more failure, you start to almost swing more conservative, because then it becomes a little bit more about yourself and becomes, I could certainly do with my taxes being lowered, looking after me. I fall into this bracket now. So you tend to, there's the notion, shall we say, that tends to happen with people. They start out more liberal and move more conservative as their life progresses.
But do you think
that's kind of the way they see the swing in the village?
Right. But do you think, to me, I've often thought that while I consider myself more of a classical liberal, there is a pragmatism to life, and there are just the harsh realities that we all have to face. And to me, what I find interesting about what happens or what's going on in America today, say with identity politics or a swing to the far left in academia on America's college campuses and things like that, that all to me is a luxury. It's a luxury. Yeah. It's a luxury to be able to march in the streets and talk about becoming a Marxist or whatever you want, because you're not confined by the fact that
the government's not shooting them or dragging them into camps like they would in other countries.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, I mean, to me, there's a little bit of, I don't want to pay my rent, so I want to be a Marxist. I mean, I do feel that there's a lot of nowadays that life is hard. And as you get older, I think that it's not so much you're becoming more conservative. I think you're just becoming more pragmatic when you realize how many responsibilities that you're going to have that no one else is going to provide for you. You leave the nest.
Yeah.
You've still got your parents. Maybe they hooked you up with money for university or something, or paid for your first apartment. But as you get older, all of the luxuries that you have to be, say, an activist for a nonprofit, those fall away from you. And in a way, like you said, what the prisoner, let's assume he's John Drake. When you're out there and you're working, you've got Mummy and Daddy, which is whatever intelligence operation you're working for, because they're equipping you. You know, Q Branch is giving you all the fabulous toys and the guns and everything, and you have a support system. But what's really interesting about number 6 is he's almost on an extended mission where his support system has been taken away. He's in enemy territory. You know, he's infiltrated.
Yeah, he's behind the lines. Yeah.
And he literally is on the mission of his life, and it really is to not just preserve. I mean, he instead of preserving Queen and country, he's preserving his own individuality. And in a way, like you were saying, politically, that's, I think, where people wind up, is they're hoping that their political views represent more of what they believe, their personal beliefs, as opposed to the tribe's beliefs, if that makes any sense. And we see the tribalism. I mean, literally, it's either number 2 or number 6. You know, and as the episode goes on, I think it's really interesting where when number 2 is standing at the parapet and he's delivering a speech, his constituency has grown considerably smaller. You know, there's not as many.
Just a few people. Yeah,
yeah, and I really do love all of that. I think, and again, everything in the show, I just assume everything in the show is incredibly well thought out. I mean, maybe as fans of this show, we give it a little bit more credit than it deserves, but I'd like to think that we don't.
I don't think we do. I think this is legitimately incredible television. I think this is incredibly well written. I think it's incredible. This episode is to the second thought out, almost. You know, like you said, there is no fat. This is one of the leanest episodes that you will get.
No, and the
in
pacing,
terms of bang, 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 bang. Everything's got a feel to it. It's got a beat to the drum. It's got a relevance. There isn't time to draw breath. I think the one moment you get to draw breath is when he gets taken back home by number 56, and then immediately he's back in his house and he's just like, she can't speak English. She's waiting for me outside. It's clearly the next day. I don't want her. You know, and that to me is like, that's your breath. That's your breath for this episode, folks. Take it in, because once he goes out the door, whoosh, everything's going to go bang, bang, bang again.
Right. Now, how did you feel about this action scene? One of the things I loved, I mean, again, as a spy movie fan, I love that we don't get much like this where he just goes and rips off a boat. You know, I love that you've got the helicopter. I mean, there's a helicopter boat chase.
That helicopter boat chase is great.
It's great, and this is for television. This is when the budget goes way up, because I don't know where they rented that helicopter, but it's pretty great. And then you get a fight with two henchmen or two guys on the boat, and it was, I think for this show, it's a pretty ambitious action sequence, and I loved seeing number 6 finally take some real action and try and jump in a boat.
Affirmative action.
I did love that. I mean, it's a great moment in the episode, and it also shows the power of Rover, because it can go after a moving boat traveling at 15 knots or something, 20 knots.
Yeah. It's underwater, traveling underwater. Then it pops up. But this is the action scene is actually after his first round of doctorination, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so you're not expecting the action scene because you think he's a little bit under the spell, and then they realize, okay, we need to up this a little bit, But yeah, I want to go back. Because one of the great scenes is he goes into the town hall. He challenges the puppets, and they are puppets. None of them are saying anything. None of them are doing anything. Number 2 is calling on the motions, and then without response, immediately saying, carried, unanimous.
Oh,
it is a clown courts. It's a clown system going on here.
Well,
And go on.
Well, what was interesting to me is when you're taken into this there's really, first of all, I should say there's great use of the control room set in this episode. They do a lot of redressing and using it in different ways, and you assume it's different locations. It's not necessarily the same location. There's different places he goes, but I was wondering, like, who are these people supposed to be? Like, are these all, like, even though it is a kangaroo court, who are they? Like, what do they represent in terms of the village itself?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
My theory, that it works in my head, is that these were people that fell for the trick. These were the people who had the same carrot dangled on them, potentially. Mm-hmm. They could just be wardens, but to me, it just felt like these are the people that fell for the trick and are under the illusion of democracy without having any say whatsoever.
Right.
So they're they're kind of almost, you can imagine in their head just saying, "I am here. I am, a member of the council. I am supporting." But nothing's happening. Nothing's happening with them. They have no say. They can't change. They can't affect anything. All the power resides at the top.
They don't even get to weigh in.
No.
There's no. It's not like a tribunal, or he's not being questioned or anything. I like that theory. That these are people that they're now part of the ineffectual council, village council, and they're all broken. They're all broken. They're all the results.
Broken people that were granted the illusion of change or of power, and
so then
never achieved.
Do you think that in a way, since McGoohan wrote this episode, is it? I mean, I don't know if he's commenting on local, on state, federal. Do you think McGoohan believes? Is he one of these people that would say that there is no real? It all local government, or it's all an illusion. None of it's effectual. I mean, none of it matters.
Mate, I don't know if that. I certainly think it doesn't really matter who you vote for when you got a two-party system. Because most places have a two-party system. Even though in the UK, you can have as many, you can have representatives from, you can create your own party. I can create the HeelsvsBabyface political party, and I can run for seat, But
I'd vote for you.
Thank you. I wouldn't. But ultimately, it boils down to the big two. And it always tends to boil down to the big two. In America, obviously, you have Democrat and Republican. And you can literally bounce from country to country, and the vast majority will just operate on a majority two-party system with potentially other small ones, but they're ineffectual. So I think he was definitely saying, when all you have is a two-party system, how can you enact any change? How can you truly enact any change? Because ultimately, you're going to have one playing silly beggars with the other. And your choices are going to be almost diametrically opposed as opposed to nuance. You're going to get that tribalism. You're never going to get that nuance.
Well, what's interesting in even in the confines of this two-party system, it's not really a two-party system, because one of the parties is just being manipulated and toyed with anyway, and the whole election's a sham, and so that's another thing. I mean,
everybody votes for a dictator.
Everybody votes for a dictator.
They say
what is it? The majority, the majority. Well, there was something else he says in that same exchange that I loved. Something about the majority, but yes, everyone votes for a dictator, and I mean, politically, this is I think a deeply cynical episode.
Oh, very much so.
I can't be any other way, I suppose. But I mean, it's really cynical.
Yes, it's a very cynical episode. It is a. But I like that, because
I do too.
There are there's a couple of upbeat episodes. There's some sad episodes. There's some, ultimately this guy's gonna have to lose a lot, but at the same time you gotta still want to root for him, and you still gotta try and give him some wins. His arrival at the village. This is how things should be. He should be taking some heavy punches, some heavy licks early on, because he's not playing the game yet. He's not. When he gets into checkmate, he tries to play the game. He plays it way too well, unfortunately for him. But at the moment, he is holding on to that ideal of individualism. He's holding on to that ideal of freedom. He's, I think ultimately the biggest cynical aspect is at the end when he's screaming that everyone's free and you're free to go, and nobody's listening.
There's no one's paying attention at all.
Yeah, no
as
one
he's
is
screaming into both phones.
Getting on with their day in the village. Freedom is an illusion. You got all these different aspects of it, but this is a heavily cynical episode, and I think for politics, that's perfect. Because politics is probably the most cynical thing on the planet that we have, and what it does to people. But my favorite my favorite scene leads on from that when they spin him around and stick the lights on him and start to twist his brain, and he meets up with the guy, the very British guy again, and I just love the exchange between them. It's so sinister. Really.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're in his head. Are you lying? Are you telling the truth? And that's another great thing I love. Like, we don't know how this machine works, but the way it's visualized, the way when he's truth-telling and when he's lying, you've got the square peg and the round hole, really. The square and the circle, moving forward, and then they both end up coming together. And I know it comes out of that whole 60s sort of pop art. Again, the surrealism of it, and it's really dynamic and interesting. And I really, and it's simple, just a simple 2-dimensional graphic on a wall or on a screen. And I just love that whole image, because what they're doing to him, the fact that they can read his thoughts to that degree, and he's this kind of, not really jovial, but he's more of a, well, hey, how you doing? Nice to see you. Let's put you in the chair. Let's talk to you and see what's up. And like you, very British.
I could be a friend, not an enemy.
Right. I'm Sigmund Freud.
It's a very clever way he introduces himself. I could be a friend. I could be an ally. So yeah.
But again, I love these. I love the brainwashing scenes, and when they're getting into his head. I love how they portray them in this episode in particular, with first the spinning, or with all those ineffectual people behind him, and then into this interrogation sequence. I mean, from a cinematic standpoint, there's some really great stuff here. And again, it all plays into the surrealism, and also that corridor. The corridor that they have.
The red corridor.
The red corridor is it looks like you're on maybe a cargo plane or something.
Yeah.
Where is this thing? And because it's got the handrails that you have to hold on to, and it's all very, it's amazing. It's very audacious from a production standpoint, how they're able to, with minimalism, really get away with some great surrealism and some really interesting and arresting visual moments. And that's something of the show, I think, people talk about the intellectual content of it, but from a filmmaking standpoint, they do a lot of really interesting stuff in this episode.
I actually love, there is a funny moment in that scene where it cuts away and it's like, where did he get, this guy's good, where did he get this guy? And he's like, oh, he's from the civil office. He quickly came around. And it's just like, Civil servant. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Civil servant just wanting to please. Yeah, got it.
And he's just going. This is just his job today.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Tomorrow he'll be assigned somewhere else.
And then when he comes out of it, he's candidate number 6. You'll be voting for me, of course. Oh, absolutely. Puts on his rosette, number 6. Oh, I'll be seeing you. You know, back at the door again. Be seeing you.
And he says it twice.
Yeah,
you know?
He's jovial, ultra polite candidate number 6 now, ready to take his accolades, to wave to the crowds, to kiss the babies, to say what they want him to say.
He has been programmed.
He has been programmed, yes. You know, this place, this village, this could be the place for you. All you need to do is give us information. Nice.
And that's how we'll get it.
Yeah.
And
it's
over.
all about the program. Yeah. And so, yeah, when we get to the attempted escape scene, you talk about filmmaking. I think the tracking of that scene is perfect, absolutely perfect. The how low the helicopter is to the boat,
right? Yes.
Really, really low. How they handle it, which is easy for me to say. How they handle it, and I just adore. When he says, perimeter breach, and then they pull the helicopter back, and just the banking of the helicopter. Then you see in the control room this white dot going, and you're like, Rover time. And then Rover comes up. He can't, we know that they can lock out controls. They did it with the helicopter in the first episode. They lock out the controls. They shut off the engine of the speedboat. He's got nowhere to go. He's half drugged up, half free. And, plunges into the water where Rover deals with him. And
when they finally drag him ashore, he's still muttering.
He's still got the
muttering to himself. So it's great. And it's also, again, you feel his futility. As an audience member watching this again, I'm like, God damn it. Damn it. You want some kind of throw me a bone as an audience member that maybe he'll succeed, but no, he's effed.
This is not how things are gonna operate here. The obvious is the great thing is, of course, is the obvious is dealt with like that. Well, why can't he just get in a helicopter? Did. Well, why can't he just get in the speedboat? Did. The obvious is the obvious, and they know it's the obvious, and that's why they have full control over it. And of course, they had the helicopter only for the first stint in Port Marion. They never had the helicopter for the second stint when they went back to do the filming. And I watched the boat scene, and I thought, because they did say they wanted the helicopter back because they had quite a big role for the helicopter. But what was really interesting about this scene, again, looking back in retrospect, is the helicopter's coming in to Port Marion. It's coming into the village. Who's on the helicopter? Number 2. So they've been off doing whatever they need to do. Number 2's in the village, which is number 56.
Right.
They are the ones who are always watching, and more often than not, literally right in front of his face. He can't see it. Because they put her under the guise of this Russian maid who can't speak English.
International.
Yes. International. Let's not put a country. Let's just say international. And if it was in Arrival, it was cosmopolitan.
Cosmopolitan.
No, it's cosmopolitan, this village. Then we get I think that's when we get the nightclub scene, isn't it? After that.
Yeah, after that. Where, I mean, what's interesting about
drunk.
that? Yeah, that's the thing. In that scene, he appears drunk, and he's there with his maid,
Number
and,
56,
and he's drinking and ranting and raving and not in a good place.
No, 58, not 56, 58. That's it. Hi. Sorry, my cat's just licking her bits and bobs. It's very kind of her to do so, but she's frightened of the fan that I've got on, so she don't cross over. The invisible air scares her. So you got the maid literally with him, and I don't think he's drunk. I think it's obviously the programming, which is,
of course,
it's the programming and him trying to fight the programming, which is making him all blah blah blah.
And he did get a face full of Rover too. This face full of Rover getting
again. It's becoming a bit of a pastime, really, of him. You can see where the meme came from in the Simpsons pop. Then he goes to the pub, the hidden away pub, which of course has the fake number 2 in it. But it's very interesting. He says that the village, you can come here away from the surveillance, away from everything, and you can be and he actually says you can be an alcoholic in private as long as you rejoin the flock. Great use of language. Rejoin the flock. To me, that's not so much religious as it is, authoritarian.
Right.
Flock is kind of used as a terminology for vicars, priests, how they treat their congregation. This is definitely not a religious moment or a religious experience.
No, I think that religion, God is dead in the village. I think.
Oh, yes, very much so. There is no God.
There is no God.
God does not exist. No, God
denominations don't exist. Religion has been banished.
Yes, this is as nihilistic as it will get, but not in a bad way, not in a desperate way.
Right.
Because there are elements of hope. There's always elements of hope within the series, here or there. When we get to his victories, we haven't got to a victory yet.
No.
But when we get to the victories, then you start to get a little sense of hope. He's drugged. He's drugged and sent for reprogramming so he can come out fighting. He wins the election with a vast majority.
His ballot box is overflowing.
Yes, but when you can hear the crowds outside shouting for number 2, number 2, number 2, and then when they put the number 2 on him and take him outside, silence.
Yeah,
he's waving. Nobody's cheering. Nobody's clapping. Their work is done. It's over. The football match is over. The war is over. Whichever tribalistic entity is going on here, it is over now. It is now returned back to the mundane. And he's driving through the crowd. Nothing. No cheering. And he's playing the role of candidate still, because that's his program, because it's all illusion. All very much illusion, and then taken through to the number 2 office with number 58.
And he plays it in such a way as there is he does have a little twinkle in his eye, I think, making you believe that maybe he will get something out of it. Like maybe he will now that he's number 2. Maybe there'll be some shred of resistance he can offer, or something he can uncover, or something. But
I thought it was. I actually thought it was the satisfaction of political victory, the self-righteous satisfaction.
Okay.
I didn't think it was. I'm number 2. I can enact change. To me, it felt like I have bested my opponent. I have beaten down the dragon. I am now the top dog. I am the boss. I will now enact my policies upon the masses. I thought it was more of a completely programmed response. I don't think he sort of came out of it until he saw himself on the screen in the
right. But I think that there's some part of him, the same way that he was able to jump in that boat, even though he was drugged up then. I think that he thought maybe there's something, and we see evidence of that later, like like when he's trying to turn off the power or whatever.
Oh,
when he's
yeah.
But there is a twinge. I mean, there's always, because he's always fighting, as drugged up as he is or as programmed as he is. There's always a part of him that's fighting, and I always got the idea that he's going to look for, there might be something. He knows it's all a game deep down inside, but there's something in him where he's like, there might be one opportunity. I might get one small sliver of a chance to do something.
Okay. I got something completely different out of it.
I mean, I agree with what you said, but I'm always looking.
No. I mean, from when he's in the room with number two.
Oh.
To me, that was when number two was like, game's over now. It's time to snap you out of it. It's time to snap. We're going to have a play, and he's having a play and he's hitting the buttons and he's like, oh. But when he goes to the screen and when it has all the dotted lights and stuff, I thought that was actually slightly deprogramming him.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's absolutely, it's turning him off.
And then when he's turning him off now. And then when she turns around, she's like, tick, tick. Tick,
but
tick.
see,
then she starts slapping him. She's bringing him out. She's jarringly bringing him out. But there is just that, instead of having that little bit of individuality left, to me, it was just like, there was a little bit of the candidate left that was just like,
all right,
get out, everyone get out. There's that little bit of that holding on until he then sort of like, I got to get out of here. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, I always see like in his mind, as I watch the show and I go through it, I always think to myself that he knows that these games are, he knows it's all BS, that all these things are games, but he's always looking for, he's like, at some point, these games are going to allow me to get some advantage or acquire some kind of information. And like with the boat scene, like I said, he was able to fight through what they had done and still try and make that escape attempt. And by getting his fingers like on the buttons, at least for a moment, that it was him. There was him asserting, like, I don't know what, it was a desperate grab for something, but I think he did think that maybe there was a way, if he could turn the power grid off for a second, there was a way that he could have made a break for it, or somebody else could have made a break for it. Like when he's screaming into the phones, like I think there's an element of him that really believes that maybe I could have, this is what I was fighting for, this moment, but then it's fleeting, and then of course there was never a moment because nothing is ever really connected to anything. So there's no way he could turn off the power. There's no way he would ever be able to do anything that's effectual especially in number two's inner sanctum.
I mean, a reoccurring theme, image, whichever one you want to place it as in the village is chess. Yeah, it's a reoccurring theme. Because this is all a game of chess. It's all a game of move, counter move, strategy, end game. So yeah. And then we get to see the worshippers of Rover.
That's another thing. Well, is there a religion? I mean, no. I mean, that's like some kind of a religious tabernacle. What is that? Who are those guys?
Are they worshiping? Are they observing? Are they studying?
Is Rover psychically powered? Maybe they're the people that power Rover.
Yeah, I like that one. That's a goodie.
I mean, that's what they power? I mean, the only way that it makes sense that Rover is even there is I love the idea that maybe these guys are using mind power to do this. That's the only way Rover could be explained to be able to do what it does. Yeah,
because we don't know if Rover is an entity or if it's technology. We don't know.
It's like in Minority Report, you had the psychics all floating in the water, which when I saw Minority Report the first time, I'm like, that's like the people the dudes that are surrounding Rover and the prisoner. I mean, I think this imagery in the show just resonates throughout the decades in various genre things. I mean, whether people know it consciously or not, but it does. Because again, that's such a weird, like that whole scene when they go meet the scientists, number 2 and number 6 go have a drink, and another guy who's got valuable information, and that whole scene in the cave, and what does all that mean as far as the election is concerned? Where are we at now?
Wow, was that place legit? Was that place a ruse? Was the story true? Was the story not true? These things you just never know when it comes out of the mouth of anyone in the village.
I mean, I always got this sense, and watching it again, that there is something legitimate going on. Like this, like maybe this scientist that he has information that they want or something, and he's somehow
working with them.
Yeah. Oh no.
Capacity,
maybe he was a prisoner himself, but there's something going on, because it's just interesting that all of that is sort of wrapped up together. You know, the scientists and the worshippers of Rover and the bar, the real alcohol. Here, you can finally have a real drink. Be drugged, but here
it wasn't a real drink. Spoiler alert! It wasn't a real drink. It was more drugs. It was more drugs to get you under our control, knock you out.
By the way, I did like to see the performance of our foe number 2 acting drunk. He did a good job.
Yes. Yeah.
And again, let's throw in together. Let's have a few.
The cheers things was great.
Loved it. Cheers.
That was it. See that guy? Yeah. Cheers.
Yeah, it's great.
There's a couple of nice comedic moments in this, for all the cynicism. There's some great little comedic moments with the civil servant, and then this. There are actually moments where you genuinely laugh. And it's quite funny because it's the second one is at the expense of number 6 in a way.
Right. Absolutely.
Because he takes it so earnestly. Because he's quite an earnest person, but he takes it so earnestly. See that person? Yes. Cheers. Oh, yeah. Cheers. He's a this, and then it goes into that side. And then he of course gets caught, beaten up to a pulp, dragged back, and we have an English speaking female number 2. Oh,
and she's been revealed, and it's her weird nondescript whatever accent she was affecting. At the end of the episode, when they do drag him back on the gurney, just so defeated. I mean, poor number 6 has been, completely this episode, as far as he's concerned, and the viewer too. It's so demoralizing. It's just
this is a bad one for him. This is
a bad one. And then of course we get a really interesting thing with this exchange. Something she says.
Well, she says, "Are you ready to talk yet?" And then again, she says, "We will only tolerate you for so long. We'll only tolerate this for so long, and then we will take this, take things from you." So he's given the warning. He's given the warning that you want to play defiant, and I like it because the first 3 episodes we're indulging you for so long. We've played a little bit of a mind trick on you. Yeah, played a little bit of a mind trick on you this time. A little bit of a head fuck, whatever you want to say. And then we're giving you a good kick in at the end as well. Are you willing to talk? Because next time A, B, and C is coming out. We're getting the drugs out next. I'm going to start messing with your head. And she's brilliant. She's perfect. When she stood there and she stood high above him, and it's a great image again. She is indeed the boss. She is indeed number 2. Number 2 is not number 2, and the prisoner is beaten, being held up, a bloody mess. It's like, ooh, the village got a great victory this week.
Well, and then
wonderful.
they you know, the she does say something very interesting about that gives us another clue as to who runs this place. And she makes a comment about she doesn't say the fatherland. She says,
"Oh, homeland. Oh, yeah,
homeland.
yeah. Give my regards to the homeland."
To the homeland, and it's like, well, that's
Russia.
I mean, obviously,
Mother Russia,
it's I mean, it's very interesting, and that was again another. Along with the international, is it French? Well, it's international, and the homeland, and all that, and that was a great.
But, in episode 1 we had Alvidasane, and then we had Au revoir and Alvidasane.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it could even potentially be a group effort.
Right.
The village couldn't, in fact, be international.
No, I mean, I think that there's a case to be made that maybe all of the governments, it's like this neutral, like in Star Trek V, the planet of galactic peace, the Klingons, the Romulans, the Federation. Maybe the village, that this is a place that exists outside of international borders, and everybody administrates some of the village. Yeah. I mean, because everybody, the intelligence agencies or whomever knew that we all have the same problem. So why don't we deal with it? If we have this place, maybe it's a place where we can exchange information while we break people. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's like having the red phone that Kennedy had to Khrushchev or whatever. It was that's what the village is, and I love that because there's been the twist. We realize who number two really is, and then literally the last image of the episode, number 6 is on a gurney and wheeled into his apartment. And the door shuts after this horrible ordeal, and then we get the face slamming against the bars. And it's just like, man, wow, this was a gut punch.
And they're just going to chuck him on the bed and go.
Right. And he wakes up and another maid will come in, with more breakfast.
Here's a nice little thing for you. One of the guys pushing the gurney was the florist in the second episode that we did Dance of the Dead. He was the guy outside the town hall that was tending to the flowers.
Right.
It was just like
I didn't know that.
It's very fussy who she lets in. Yeah, I recognize it because he's got a very distinct strappish beard. So they are clearly a warder, yeah. And then the moment there was a part when he's in the cart with the reporter and photographer, when they're driving, couple of tourists at Port Marion are sticking their head over the wall, and they're watching the filming, and they're following the cart and the camera, and it's just like, gotcha, I saw you. And it's clearly not villagers because they have climbed up onto the wall and they're like looking over this wall.
Or maybe they're people that maybe they're people that just escaped and they're seeing if they've been followed, but people are too concerned with number 6. So these are people that are making their escape. They're not tourists. Come on.
Yeah. When they're gone, quick, go. Now they're dealing with this bloke. Quick, leg it. Let's get out of here. But it's fantastic, this episode. Absolutely fantastic. Great cast, well acted, great dialogue. Like I said, there's not a moment wasted in this whole process. It's a very cynical view on politics.
And it's just a fascinating ride. Also, it gives us a lot of insight into, because McGoohan wrote it, that there's a lot of insight into the village itself and how things work, and it really draws you in, and it's a fascinating episode to rewatch because you're constantly looking around for all these different details, and there's a lot of great phraseology in this episode, a lot of great dialogue. It's terrific. It's peak Prisoner, this episode.
Yeah, it's to me it's McGoohan's best written episode by a long shot. by the time he got to Fallout, I don't think he even knew what the hell he was doing in Fallout. So, but that's another video for another time.
Right.
This is what I think is even better, and this is completely serendipitous. Is this was recorded obviously in the first stint at Port Marion,
right?
And
the first 4 episodes.
Bar 1 or 2 scenes. It is miserable outside.
Oh, that's one of the things you notice. It's always raining. It's wet the whole time,
and it just fits the theme of the episode perfectly. I think there's just one part where he leaves his house where the sun's out and the sun's shining.
Yeah,
I don't recall the sun being out other than that. Every time else, it's overcast. It looks dark. You'd imagine it would be pretty dark.
Well, and our favorite small manservant constantly has the umbrella with him. He's everywhere. Everywhere he goes with the umbrella open, which I love. It's
very British as well, though. That's very British.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it fits in perfectly to Arrival, Dance of the Dead, Free for All. That to me just seems a lock of episode 1, 2, 3. From
absolutely.
A continuity perspective.
That was another thing. I mean, this gets you into the chimes of Big Ben. If you watch it as the second episode, it's incredibly disruptive. Whereas this order that we're following is far more interesting from a narrative standpoint, because that big leap, chimes of Big Ben makes a big leap outside the village, and I've always hated that it came. That's how when I first watched The Prisoner, that's how when I first got it on home video, I didn't know that there was an order the first time I watched it. I watched it and how it was played on PBS. Maybe they played Chimes of Big Ben second. I don't remember. But when I finally got the Laserdiscs, I had The Prisoner on Laserdisc and was watching them in that order. It always bothered me. Chimes of Big Ben was number 2.
If Chimes of Big Ben hadn't happened, then by time Many Happy Returns came around, I think that would have been immense in what happens in that episode. Obviously, we won't go into that today, but that would have been immense what happens in that episode. And then you have a relative gap between Many Happy Returns, then Chimes of Big Ben, which appears as if it really should be at the back end of episodes, not front loaded.
Absolutely.
Then again, it would have been like, oh, so close.
Because you're building up. I mean, the psychological manipulation gets exponentially larger, and to me, Chimes of Big Ben is the biggest example of that. And coming out early on, you're like, well, then the rest of these episodes, well, sure, that's what they're doing to him. Of course,
sure, yeah. Because if you were to compare Many Happy Returns to Chimes of Big Ben, you realize that the stakes were upped in Chimes of Big Ben, and what he had to lose was upped, and what he lost was upped.
Exactly.
It would have been that escalation. I think these first 3 episodes come across as almost, I know in a sadistic way, playful. The village are playing with him.
Absolutely.
Like a cat with a bird.
They're all being entertained by it. Like, you don't get the idea that the number 2s are being hauled off to their deaths.
No.
Or they're being disposed, which you do feel, sometimes I do feel later on that they are. Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling. I think that's, I think that's
time's up, matey. Time's up.
Exactly.
It's your funeral. That's just a matter of time. Regardless of, how that episode ends, that's just a matter of time. And also, well, 2 number 2s, really. We'll get to that. We'll get to that when it comes. So, yes, this kind of feels like the village feels as if they've got this. We got this guy, We're playing with him. We're messing with him. This guy's going to break any time now. We're on this. We're on this.
No, and you definitely feel that number 6 really poses no threat. I mean, we're with him, but you don't feel that he's ever going to ever be able to escape or get out of this. And that's kind of what I liked about it. On one hand, like you said, the village is toying with him, but also it's very demoralizing for if you're a fan of number 6 and want him to escape, because they really as we're watching this, they're putting us, the viewers, we're like, oh, it's harrowing.
Like I said, seeing this episode, it really makes me think, damn it, Checkmate should come after this, mate, shouldn't it? When he's talking about going for the prisoners and the wardens, shouldn't Checkmate happen now, then ABC? And it's just kind of like, you're just like playing it over in your head about where they would all fit into this. Because synergistically, they followed on with what's been said in Dance of the Dead. They said, we're democratic. You follow on with free for all.
Sure.
In free for all, he says, I'm going to find out who are the prisoners and who are the warders. So you kind of think, well, should Checkmate happen next? When he's got his faculties back, it's kind of like, would he be like, right, I'm gonna start finding out who's who here. What's going on here?
Well, that makes sense. I mean, what happens in Checkmate, it changes things a little bit. I mean, it definitely it gives you, the tone shifts. It's like a perfect. I mean, we could do that. Were we going to watch ABC next?
Well, yeah. Well, this is just it, because but ABC gives him a win, and it's just like, where'd you give him that? The thing about ABC is the desperation of that number 2. And it's the first time we've seen a more desperate number 2. I think Checkmate fits. I think it fits more.
Well, then let's do that, because the desperation of number 2 would if the village has played with them for 4 episodes, the 5th episode, it's like playtime's over now, and then you've got a number 2 where the stakes are raised for number 2. You better playtime's over. Let's get some results, buddy.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. I like that look. Do you want to open it up to the floor?
Yeah, let's see. We got some
super chats. Yeah,
we got some super chats in here. Let's see. As I put my glasses on to read, Mark C is here. Mark C says, "Oh, this is unrelated to what we're saying," but Mark C says, "Rob, you're going to interview Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa." Yes, I am. Amazing actor. Ooh. I'm a huge fan. Should a Flash Gordon movie ever get made, he is my favorite choice to play Ming the Merciless. What Mark is referring to is this weekend. There is the 3rd Mainframe Comic-Con, which is an online Comic-Con these great guys out of Chicago created, and they last 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, and they have half an hour long panel discussions, and I've been moderating those panel discussions. It's me and another person one-on-one. They're great, and they go so quickly, and it's a lot of fun, and it's really well run, really well organized. So Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa has been in a million different things, and you remember him from, I mean, he was the bailiff. He was Q's bailiff in Encounter at Farpoint. In the trial area where he's got the, like, the Fu Manchu mustache, but he's been a character actor. He's been in a million things. Mortal Kombat, just amazing stuff. I loved him in Philip Kaufman's Michael Crichton adaptation Rising Sun. He has a great meaty role in that. I want to talk to him about that because that's my favorite thing he's ever been in because he has so much screen time. But he was like in Showdown in Little Tokyo with Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee. I mean, he's been in so much stuff. So, yes, Mark, I am very, very excited to talk to him.
Nice.
John is here.
Sorry, tomorrow I am interviewing DC legend Graham Nolan. Artist for DC Comics, predominantly in the 90s when I first started collecting comics.
Yeah.
It was just before the Nightfall run started, and Norm Brayfogle stepped aside, I think, on Detective Comics, and Graham Nolan, Dixon Nolan were over on Detective, and it was I love Graham Nolan's work, love his art.
Oh, that's great.
Love this Batman. Yeah, so I'm going to be chatting to him tomorrow.
That's very cool.
That's going to be fun times.
John sends in a super chat. Thank you, John. Shane O'Reilly sends in a super chat. No one's asking questions. Scottish Nerd sends in a super chat. Mark C says, I want a toaster caddy like the one they use at the beginning breakfast.
Yeah, it's nice. Used to see those a lot. I went to a very posh restaurant once called Betty's in Harrogate. We were in North Yorkshire, and we stopped off at this place called Betty's because it was real posh, and we weren't posh, so we thought we're gonna treat ourselves. We're gonna feel what it feels like to be one of them. And so we went to Betty's, and everything came on the carts.
Oh,
they
yeah.
were wheeled out. Oh yeah. They have meringues shaped like swans. It was class.
Well, that makes me, now I'm hungry. Now I want to go to that place. I have a crumpet and tea and whatever.
Google it. Betty's tea room, Harrogate.
All right.
I think it was an oldie tea room and continued to be a restaurant and tea room. Real posh like.
Meisha Eugene sends in a super chat and says, Rob, did you watch In My Mind on Amazon Prime? I have not watched that yet. And that's
good.
The prison. Yeah, I saw that a long time ago, but I have not. When it first came, like 3 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, 2017 it came out.
Yeah, that's not a long time ago, but I watched it then. I need to watch it again because when I've read so many books about The Prisoner and all that, so I wasn't paying the kind of attention I should be paying to it now that we're going back through all the episodes. John comes back and sends in another super chat and says, hit the like button, all. Thanks again for doing these streams. They really add so much to the enjoyment of the series.
Thank you.
Well, that's very nice. I very much appreciate that. I'm having so much fun doing these streams and going back and revisiting the episodes. Mark C sends in another super chat and says, the scarf worn by number 2 is black with a white stripe like number 6's sweater, but with a yellow stripe. I see it as a symbol that number 2 is the bridge between number 6 and the colorful crowd of the village. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I always wondered if there was more to the scarf, because number 2 invariably wore a scarf, regardless of who they were. There would, that scarf, again, the scarf is imagery which appears a lot. Penny farthing, scarf, chess. This is reoccurring imagery within the village, and nothing is done for the sake of doing in this production. Everything has a reason. The penny farthing had a reason. Chess has a reason because this is obviously one massive chess game between number 6 and the village, number 2, or whichever organization this is. So the scarf must be representative of something. Could it be imagery for a leash almost?
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I thought.
Yeah, I've always thought that it's some kind of a leash is the obvious thing. Absolutely, that it's something. You've always got something around your neck, and number 2 to me is that scarf. If you don't do your job, it's going to turn into a noose, and you're gonna dangle
like
from it.
That.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that's what I've always thought about that scarf. One day they're going to hang you off a bridge with that thing if he doesn't get broken. And in a way, in my own mind, I always thought that the number 2s have to wear the scarf as a reminder that if you don't do your job, you're going to be dangling from London Bridge or something.
Yeah, I like that. Is good. I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot.
So
yeah.
And Mark C comes back again and says, I've been trying to draw Patrick McGoohan as number 6. With the shape of his eyes and the brow, it's a bitch. Yeah, he's got an interesting face.
I drew him when I was I want to say 15 years old. I don't have the original art anymore, but I'm just wondering if there is a picture. Maybe I'll phone my mum, see if there's a picture in some photo albums somewhere. She sent me a photo album of me, but there was no. There was. I was hoping to find to show. There was a picture, which I'm sure my mum's got. There was a picture she took of me, and it was me. Bearing in mind, this would have been taken in probably 1992. Yeah, I think actually I got into the prison in 1992, and 25th anniversary. So bear in mind, this is pre-internet, any of that stuff. I cosplay number 6 with whatever materials I had in the home. So I think I managed to get a blue polo neck. I think I just had a black jacket, no trim, unfortunately. Brown cargo pants and a scarf. A scarf. And that was my... And I think I drew a number 6 badge or a number 2 badge or a badge. So I can't remember if it was number 6 or a villager that, you know, some sort of like for like villager that I did. But there's a picture of that somewhere. I'll have to see if Mummy Dearest has it in an album somewhere.
I would like to see this. Come on, you got to find it.
Teenage me, good God.
Sean M.
Right, Emmy.
Sends in a super chat and says, I think a lot of The Prisoner is Patrick McGoohan saying F you to the audience, to Lou Grade, to everyone. At that time, off the popularity of Danger Man, they would pay him for anything.
Oh, I don't think it's an F you. He loved Lou Grade.
Yeah,
Lou
and
Grade loved him, and he loved Lou Grade.
And I also think that there's too much going on. I mean, there's if this was just an FU, it would be more like a punk rock song, I think. You know, like it would be more dissonant and more there's so much thought, and this touches on so many. It touches on religion, it touches on philosophy, it touches on politics, it touches on education, what was happening at the time, the social upheaval that was going on in the world. And I do think that there's the fact that we're talking about this show 53 years later proves that it wasn't just, I mean, maybe Fallout is an FU, but I think even that.
I think if it is, it's an FU to the show.
right. And I think this show is so, it's just so compelling and it's so well thought out that it's more than just that. I mean, there's too much going on, and I have too much respect for all the contributors. It's good stuff. So, and by the way, I didn't mean to say it was punk, meaning punk rock songs. There's a lot of great punk rock songs I love that have a lot of politics in them, and it's not just punk is not just FU, in a way, even though it can be, I guess.
No, I thought you meant punk rock in sort of like visceral nature of it.
Yes, absolutely.
That's how I interpreted you when you said punk rock. Yeah, this is absolutely not an FU.
Yeah.
This is very considered. This is a very considered piece of writing. Sure, he got extended beyond what he wanted it to be extended to. But this is a very considered piece of writing that consumed him. I mean, he had a mental breakdown doing this. Leo McCurn had a mental breakdown doing this.
Right.
This was driving people to their limits, you know, and the only way that you kind of get to that position is if you are so involved and you care so much. So there was no FU here. This is Patrick discussing society. This is him discussing the individual within society and the many forms and trials and tribulations which the individual has to deal with. And yeah, looking at society in general, when you look at things like the general with education and stuff like that, that is very much being critical of the establishment.
Sure.
But I think that, even though the village can be interpreted as a flock and everything, I think McGoohan sees the individual very much as you. He's saying you are an individual. You are a free-minded individual. It's your responsibility to maintain that. It's your responsibility to be free.
Yes.
If you dismiss that, if you decide to cast that aside, then you will conform and you will become a sheep. That's what will happen. But you're given free will. You are a free person, or a free man in this case, and it's up to you how you choose to live and how you choose to express that individuality.
Absolutely. Speaking of the general, Scott M sends in a super chat and says, "Hello, gents. Do the general before A, B, and C. They both feature the same number 2, and the general shows why number 2 is so desperate in A, B, and C."
I like the gap. I like the return. I like giving it time to breathe.
Yeah, I do too, actually.
I think the general also, we have a much more confident number 6 because he's had a couple of wins under his belt as well. So I don't think the general would fit next to ABC because due to that logic, you would have Chinese to Big Ben, Chinese to Big Ben. I'm drawing a blank.
I don't. It would be not happily ever after.
No, I'm drawing a complete blank.
The episode before Fallout.
Yeah, Once Upon a Time.
Once Upon a Time.
It would
happily
go,
ever after.
Chinese to Big Ben, Once Upon a Time, Fallout, and that's really not how you want to read Leo McKern's number 2 either. You want that breath.
Yeah, because the Leo McCurn in Happily Ever After, he is not the same.
Once Upon a Time.
Once Upon a Time, he's not the same Leo McCurn as he is in Chimes of Big Ben. They can't follow one another right after.
No, because
you need the time.
Yeah, you need, because it's almost at the end of Chinese of Big Ben, without giving anything away. Well, but it's not much, but it's a 53-year gap. He's got a win out of it. Leo McKern's got a win out of it to some degree. Number 6 has taken a devastating loss again. And you kind of feel as if they're very happy with him. And, they give a couple more people a couple of shots. And then they're like, okay, let's up the stakes because we think you can beat him mentally. Let's up the stakes. Then you bring it back for Once Upon a Time. You have your kind of the girl who is death in between. You're living in harmony in between. And then you go for Once Upon a Time, and that's when you bring him back. I kind of like the theory of the number 2 from A, B, and C being sort of taken away, castigated, berated, browbeaten, and almost sentenced back to the village.
Right,
for the general.
Exactly right. Like he is, yeah. Because yeah.
So I was going to say in the general he don't, for want of a better phrase, and sorry to be so vulgar, but he doesn't want to fuck with number 6. Number 6 inserts himself into the general.
Right.
He's aware of number 6 obviously because of A, B, and C, and yes, they do have some banter, and yes, he's kind of arrogant enough to feel as if number 6 could be part of the general's programming, but he's not there for number 6, and it's his sort of arrogance to say, well, let's see if we get number 6 to participate in this, and it's just like, oh fuck. You could almost imagine that he was told to not to, don't mess with number 6, leave him alone.
Absolutely. And I think the fact that when they bring back number 2s, there's a statement being made as well of sort of the overall the mechanics of how this works. Like in at the end of this episode, you feel that again, this was a win for the village. And our number two, she's like, she did what she was supposed to do. You know, and because they know that to break him down is a process. And she succeeded admirably, and she gets to leave and go to her next assignment. But the idea that that you could get in, if you're a number two that somehow winds up in the doghouse with your superiors, you know, they'll give you another shot. But in the case of Leo McCurn, he was successful. He's probably the most successful number two. He pulled the biggest trick out of his hat in terms of what was done to number six. So they bring him back because he's like the number one contender. You know, it's like George Foreman and Ali. You got to bring back the number one the heavyweight champion. Leo McCurn is the number two heavyweight champion of the world, if there is such a thing.
The number two from A, B, and C oversteps his boundaries in A, B, and C.
Yeah,
and you know, we could actually debate the point that he was the first number two to actually overreach, and his overreaching actually gave number six an in and gave him a win.
Yeah.
So you could almost argue that number two was instrumental in getting number six to fight back, to start to play their game back on them. And that's why when he comes back in the general, he's confident because I don't think he has to deal with number six. You know, his job is to turn up with the professor, deal the educational sermons or whatever you want to call them, lessons, lectures, and indoctrinations, and just leave number six alone. But it's just like he overstepped in A, B, and C, and he's overstepped in the general, and that was his undoing. And that's why I think that number two is never to be seen again.
Well, Mark C. sent his drawing to us, and there it is. There is his drawing of Patrick McGoohan. It's pretty good, actually. And he did that, but he said it's hard to draw him. So, Mark, I like your drawing. You're a very talented artist. I enjoy that. Now you have to do a whole Prisoner comic. So,
yeah, please.
And Drake is 6 sent in a super chat and said, yes, he is. I always felt number 6 is a case study in control. If they cannot control number 6's personal type, the dreams of control are delusional at best. That's interesting. So I guess if they can control number 6, they can control anyone, because most people are much more easily controlled, and number 6 is so obstinate. He's such an obstacle that if you can destroy that, then you can control anything. I mean, maybe that's, I don't know.
The reason why I disagree is because I think number 6 is a case study in individuality. I think it's more of a case study of I've said before in these chats, I think that why did he resign is a gateway. It's an opening of a door, and it's an opening of a door to rid somebody of their individuality, to go inside, like the vampire being let into the house. They want to know the answer to that question, because if they get him to answer one question, they'll get him to answer all the questions, and they will control him. He will be sheep. He will be part of the flock. So I think it's a case study in the individual and remaining the individual as opposed to controlling everybody. I think it's certainly a metaphor for the unique as opposed to the many.
Well, I also think too that there's something I always kind of thought about, in that if John Drake was a great agent, and fought for the Queen and the British end and all of those things, if John Drake was such a great agent and he was the best of the best and he represented all that was good, the fact that person, the most patriotic, the most loyal, that person could suddenly just up and leave would be worrisome to the powers that be. Like, well, wait a minute, this would be why would I don't understand, like why would he do this? Because if he leaves,
that's explored in Many Happy Returns.
Yes, it is. But I've always thought that is the biggest danger, that when you have our greatest patriots and the people that seem to support our ideology, our government or whatever, if they'll leave without warning or without explanation at the time, well, how secure can we be in the rest of our populace, the rest of our people? And I think that
I see that.
And they want to make sure that the only control they have is over individuals, and if the things that individuals believe in, which is our power structure, if somebody suddenly the only reason, like for instance, I'm always amazed here in America, we have stop signs and stoplights on every road. Well, the only reason they work is because people have agreed to stop.
Yes.
We've all agreed to abide by the rules. Yes. And if you wanted to have true revolution in this country, people just, I'm not going to stop at stoplights anymore. I'm going to run stop signs. I mean, there's a form of protest that nobody's ever engaged in, but that would cause chaos. It would cause accidents. And so this idea that we all agree to be obedient or to mind the social structure, society and civility are based on the fact that we all collectively agree to do so. And number 6 is a man who, for whatever reason, has suddenly upped and decided not to. He's whatever protocol, he just upped and opted out of the society that he lived in, and everyone's like, wait a minute, he was the best of us. Why would he do this? And he's offered no explanation, and we can't have that. We just can't have our society. It won't work if people opt out all of a sudden for no reason at all.
Gotcha. Right. So that operates off the insinuation that the resignation letter is exceptionally vague.
Right. I mean, I think, or maybe it's not exceptionally vague, because I think he probably stated very clearly what about. But there was never any. It's not like he went and reported it. He didn't go to the Human Resources Department and go, I've really just not liked how things have been going for a while. No, it was something that was unexpected, and he just dropped that bomb on his superiors. And then, of course, once you do that, then because of the line of work he's in, immediately you're suspect, like, he's clearly not telling us the truth. There's a lot more to this. What are we going to do? How are we going to... Are there other agents that are suddenly going to defect? What the hell's going on? Because when he defects, our entire whatever our situation is, has been compromised. And
I get you. I get where you're coming. Yeah. I was looking at it from a more metaphorical stance.
Oh, right, sure, and there's that too. Yeah. But I mean, to me, it's always interesting. It's like when, when a person gets. When I was growing up, 70s and 80s cult movies. There were movies about people that went into religious cults, and there was a lot about deprogrammers that would have to come in and kidnap these people and deprogram them from their cultish programming, which I always thought that because it was always a cautionary tale. This person seemed so nice, and then they were ensorcelled or bamboozled by this charismatic David Koresh cult leader or whatever, and they go to Waco, and stuff like that would happen.
The village is the ultimate Stockholm syndrome, I suppose.
Yes, and I think that's. I mean, you could think of it that way. It's all if you wanted to, I suppose. But again, I think there is something to be said about the village represents order, and civility. That's what they want. They don't want these disruptive. I mean, our society, if everyone was disruptive like number 6, we'd never get anything done. We have to have a function.
But he does function in society. He has functioned in society. The village is wanting more than just function. It's wanting complete and utter submission.
Sure.
And there's I think there's a distinct difference between we don't run stop signs because we know the common sense of it.
Sure.
So we follow certain rules because our brains understand the common sense, common sensibility of it all. Whereas if we were provided with a rule that's like, oh, if you're walking down the street now, you have to hop, you'd be like, fuck off. Right. You know, that's just stupid. You know, your brain would be that stupid. It's not logical. There's no reason for it. So we wouldn't do it. We would rebel. We would say, no, we're going to walk on 2 feet like normal human beings. So it's a matter of you can work within the system and you can conform to a degree, but it's when that line is overstretched. And we could argue, particularly with today, I'm not saying one view or another. I'm just saying this is a point that could be debated with COVID and the lockdowns and things like that. You will have people that would be okay and believe that the lockdowns were necessary and functional. And you will have people that would be like, this is unnecessary for what's been going on. It's wrong that we've been locked down. The implications and the results of what's happened. So you could. That's where the debate comes in.
Sure.
The Village is about full, unequivocal submission. It's about what is this?
So the Village is far left.
It's essentially state. Well, yeah, it's yeah. It's yeah, it is. But I mean, if you're putting it in today's, back in those days, you would say it's more conservative. These days, it's far left.
I mean, that's the thing.
It's crazy.
You know that what I find really interesting now is that the identitarian politics is all about making you submit to certain things, and like you said, the stopping at stop signs. The reason people do that is because it's common sense. You don't want to hit another car. You don't want to hurt somebody. That's why you stop when you come to an intersection. You look both ways. There are rules.
Self-preservation in there as well.
Absolutely. And nowadays, you know, people are making things up to make themselves feel better. And when groups adopt that thinking, then they expect you to submit to whatever they're telling you to say. You know,
change your mind.
I was asked yesterday, a friend of mine asked me if I was going to use pronouns, what pronouns would I use for myself?
Yeah, I saw your tweet. Yeah.
And I said, you know, I, me, and mine. And that was not what they were asking, but I was being cheeky. But at the end of the day, what they wanted me to do is they wanted me, I guess, to prove that I was some kind of an ally. I'm like, but you already know I'm an ally.
Yes.
I've been on YouTube now for 5 years on various shows. You can watch my own show. I mean, I think that my whole brand is to be inclusive as long as we can talk to one another.
It's about submission, Robert.
I know. And it was just this interesting idea that now what's really weird is people are going against. That was pretty good. That was a good Donald Sutherland there.
It went bad, isn't it? It's all right.
But, I think that's why watching the show again, why it's so important is, we can't submit, especially when things are not based. One of the things that we have no more common sense. And, Patrick McGoohan, in a way, is, number 6. He's almost the ultimate example of common sense because he what he's doing is not something that's necessarily revolutionary.
Balance.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's really important. And that's, especially here in America, I honestly don't recognize. It's very difficult for me to recognize this country the way people I'm used to being able to sit down with somebody at a pub or even in an online forum and have a conversation and not having to worry about what I'm going to say or the words that I'm going to use, that the actual language that I've been learning my entire life has been somehow, some words have been deemed bad.
Well, that's the identitarian left, though. That's not the conservatives. That's
what I mean. But that's what I mean. That I would have thought that I've always thought that I was a classical liberal, but that I leaned more left. And now what's weird is I feel like half the time I'm in a Franz Kafka novel, listening to the trial where people are like, "You're guilty." I'm like, "Guilty of what? Yes. What am I guilty of? I'm guilty of something you just made up, and now you're accusing me of not being an ally or being somebody that and it's such a strange. How do you combat that? if somebody just tells you that you need to use these words and you don't use these words, and then they tell you you've been excommunicated, you're ostracized. I'm like, well, wait a minute, for what? You just made up a crime.
You join the Borg.
Yes.
You show your neck and you get the tubes.
And I think that, like what you said, the meaning of the prisoner, as I'm watching it, it's very apparent to me how it's changed since 50 years. It's still the same message is still the same, but our society is completely different. So the meaning of the prisoner has been sort of flipped. I mean, the meaning for number 6 remains the same, but the overall meaning to what it means to us, the viewers, has sort of changed in a way.
Yeah. The message. Well, you could say, when you ignore history, you are doomed to repeat it. And I think that's why messages like this are so important, because these are messages which live on. The message wasn't just for the 60s. It wasn't just because of the revolution in the 60s. It wasn't because of post-World War II. These are themes which are recurrent throughout history, that just because we live in an inverted commas free world doesn't mean that they don't exist. Balances of power shift, sensibilities shift. In recent time, we have seen pretty much the destruction of the centrist, and we have seen the rise of the extremist. And the extremist is both ends. It's almost a circle now, where the centrist would be the north, and the extremes have unfortunately come together in the south, and they don't realize that they are actually the same. They have the same ideals. One goes under the banner of racism and intolerance. The other goes under the banner of virtue, and they both are exactly the same as each other. And people are scattered throughout this huge rest of the circle now, as opposed to this line with a centrist and an extreme, little extreme. It's now just been bent and forged into something completely different. And so, there will be a swing again, as there always will be. And there will be a monumental shift away from identitarian politics at one point. When that's going to occur, who knows? But the theme will be as relevant as it is today as it will be in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, in 30 years' time. You would be able to watch a show like this, and you will be able to apply the messages and the themes into your modern-day culture, because it's very much a cultural thing. Like we said, there's an episode coming up called A Change of Mind. It's Twitter. It's cancel culture. And there was no Twitter or cancel culture, well, technically, back in 67. But it fits perfectly because the theme is the same. Because the theme is resonant with when you get massive groups of people together and you suddenly program them with the same ideology, attitude, discrimination, whatever it may be. They will come for you.
We have another one.
You got to round up soon because you got Robservation in 10.
Yeah, I got to do Robservation. I'm gonna move Robservation to 2:30 because I need to eat something.
Okay.
Sean M sends in a super chat and says, "I didn't say it was only an FU. It was certainly very considered. Patrick McGoohan was a rather intense guy." Yeah,
well, he was certainly intense. I just don't think it was a nephew at all. I don't think there was any. Not to the individual, but there was definitely criticism to the establishment. Sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're 2 hours, and a little under 2 hours in 4 minutes. So what should we do? What is going to be our next episode? Is it going to be? Should we do Checkmate?
I think Checkmate fits. I just think it really fits into the synergy of the first 3 episodes.
I like that idea. Just because it's different. I like it. I like this, and we're sort of building a new continuity as we go along.
Yeah, and it also He also shows number six's attempt to play their game for the first time and fail miserably. Oh no!
Right.
So I should actually say, win too hard. He won too much. In actual fact. So yeah, I think checkmate followed by A, B, and C.
All right, that sounds good to me. I'm in. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings from across the 28 known galaxies, however you identify. Checkmate and A, B, and C. You'll be joining us next week on HeelsvsBabyface's channel, as we'll be hosting. And we'll have another exciting episode of 6 of 1. We also have Mark C. wrote in one more time. So here's how I see our presidential choice. A president that half the country hates, passionately, or Marxism. Which will we be able to get rid of first? I don't know about that. I mean, look, Marxism didn't work in the 20th century. It's not going to work in the 21st century. And I would like to think that cooler heads will prevail. I hope. Marxism is not a road that Americans, I think, are ever going to really travel down. It's, again, I hope not. I mean...
No, I think there's a very silent majority in America right now.
Yeah.
I think there's a very silent audience in America that are just keeping quiet. They're not opening their mouths. And I think when the polls open in November, I think you're going to find that anyone that is remotely affiliated with siding on behalf of BLM, Antifa, is going to get annihilated. I think it's going to be a landslide in November.
It's going to be interesting to see. But on that note, I guess we should end this. Do you have anything to add, to say? Another great show. I love doing these.
I love this so much.
So much fun.
It's just so much fun. The audience remained ridiculously consistent in number, like within 5 for the whole show. It was absolutely incredible. It was like 370, 375, around that sort of bracket for the whole show. So it was great to see, sort of like the consistency there. It's great to see the sort of love of the show still living on.
I know.
Any converts we can bring along with us is all the better.
It's terrific. All right. Well, I will. I guess I will say, be seeing you.
Yeah.
And that whole thing. And this was great, man. I can't wait till next week.
Neither can I. Checkmate, Robert.
Checkmate. And I will put up Mark C's picture to take us out. His drawing of Patrick McGoohan. I want to thank you all for being here. I don't think my moderators were here because I didn't tell them about this. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Robert Priso's here. Well, thank you to my moderating staff. Thanks to Mike Bodden. Thanks to Greg Smith. Thanks to Robert Priso and to the Richard, Robert, and Mr. Derringer's here. I guess my moderating staff was here. So thank you guys for being here. It's great to have moderators that are great moderators. So thank you very much for that. I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel. And I will take this off and put this back. And I will say, as everyone knows, I always say this. Every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I bid you all a fond farewell. Or, as we say, one more time, be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
All right. See you guys later.